back, had to shut the door to the laundry room. All right, so page 124, essay 6, let's look at what refutation is. First, let's note where it belongs in the essay. If you're looking here at page 124, sample essay A for essay 6, we see that refutation belongs after your third proof, just before your conclusion. So this is something that we're adding. I said in my Google Classrooms post about refutation that it was big news because we're adding a whole new section. Our skeleton until now has had pretty much 5 components: the introduction, the 3 proof or body paragraphs, and then the conclusion. We're now adding something to just before the conclusion, the refutation. Okay? Let's see what it says. Some people say that Edmund should have followed the White Witch. They argue that the White Witch took care of Edmund, feeding him Turkish delight and speaking kindly to him. However, this idea is inadequate because we see the White Witch's true personality later. We see that she did not really care about Edmund, but that she simply wanted to take over Narnia. Feeding Edmund Turkish delight and speaking kindly to him was just, that should be were just a means to reaching her evil goal. Okay, so let's pull this apart. We begin our refutation paragraph with "some people say." Now, there are other ways to begin, but for the first time, I would simply use that. Just take the carrot and use it, because it will guide you in your tone for your refutation. Some people say. What do they say? They say the opposite of your position. So you're admitting or conceding that some people disagree with you. Some people say this person took the position that Edmund should not have followed the White Witch, so her antithesis, or counter-thesis it's called, it's not antithesis, it's counter-thesis, is that Edmund should have followed the White Witch, period. We give a detail or two. We give 2 little sub-proofs, just touch on them lightly. We don't want to go too in-depth. For one thing, you don't want to write another essay. And for another, you don't want to give too much credence to your opponent's view. We're only mentioning this as a tool to bring our reader back to our position, okay? They argue, these are the opponents, right? They argue that the White Witch took care of Edmund, feeding him Turkish delight and speaking kindly to him. Our writer here has given us a light sub-proof, a little bit of support for the counter thesis. Look what she does next. However, this idea is inadequate. That's a great word, inadequate. That word means it has the appearance of correctness, right? But at closer look, it does not measure up. It's inadequate. I really like that word. I think that's a great word that you could use for your refutation for essay 6. Just do the same thing this person did. However, this idea is inadequate. Why? Because we see the White Witch's true personality later. We see that she did not really care about Edmund, but that she simply wanted to take over Narnia. Now the writer, has given us some counter proof to why that we have shown the flaw, we have shown the lack of reasoning in the imaginary opponent's viewpoint. Feeding Edmund Turkish delight and speaking kindly to him was just a means to reach her evil goal. Okay, what comes next? In addition, people argue that Edmund should have followed the White Witch because he was alone and scared. Thus, he could not use proper judgment. All right, what did the writer do here? The writer gave us a second proof corresponding with the counter thesis. Okay? This argument is also invalid. Another great word, invalid. This argument is also invalid because Edmund was not really alone. He had his trustworthy sister Lucy with him, and she had already testified that the White Witch was evil. We know that Edmund followed the White Witch out of pride and selfish ambition. Great job this person did, buttoning up that second counterproof, and showing why it was flawed. Look at this. Look at this third. I guess we could call this refutation sub 3, maybe. I mean, they have 3 different paragraphs here, all under refutation. Maybe for clarity, maybe you'll do it that way. You can just jam all these in the same paragraph if you want, though. Neither of these arguments, now look, we're going to restate those 2 weak arguments. Neither of these arguments, that the White Witch took care of Edmund and that Edmund was alone and scared, would give Edmund any sufficient reason to follow the White Witch. A nice mini conclusion there before our real conclusion. Kind of restating that the arguments from the opponent don't really stand any kind of probing. Once you look closer, they're just weak. They just fall. Then we go into our conclusion. That's the end of refutation.